chat for a second. All right, just while people file into the room, I will. We're going to kill some dead air here. I'm Gary DeHart with Insightful Accountant, and then Heather Sperduto with ADP heads up the accountant channel with ADP. She'll be our speaker today, but we'll get into that in just a minute. So while we wait and kill a little bit of time, what is your favorite? Well, I asked food yesterday, so I'm going to stick with the food theme. What's your favorite food?
Very easy, Gary. It's pasta. I could eat pasta breakfast, I could eat pasta lunch, and I could eat pasta dinner.
Any kind of pasta. Now, is a red sauce, a white sauce, doesn't matter.
Listen, I'm partial to red. We do a big Sunday dinner, so I would say I'm going red.
Going with the red sauce. All right. Well, that's fair. There's a do you come down here now? Do you come to Atlanta or the Atlanta area very often?
I do, and my favorite restaurant in the whole country is Antigua Posta, which is in Atlanta. And that's a big statement because I travel often. So for me to say my favorite restaurant is in your home turf.
Wow. Is it like downtown or where is it?
It's kind of like Buckhead. It's near Buckhead, but it is exceptional.
And is it Italian? What is it?
It is Italian. Yes, it is. Pasta, really? Pasta. There you go.
Never heard of it. What's the name of it again?
Antigua, Antica, Posta, Posta.
I got to look that up. I haven't looked at it. I haven't heard of that. There's a restaurant family that's up here closer to us that has multiple restaurants. And our favorite it's called Sugo, and it's right down the street from us. Again, not too far from the ADP Alpharetta campus. Again, maybe 4 or 5 miles. But so if you're in town, let me know. We'll go grab some Sugo. So
will do, my friend. Will do.
All right. So I guess we should do some work here, right? So let me get this thing kicked off. So good morning and thank you for joining us for day 2 of Insightful Accountant's Future Forward Summit. My name is Gary DeHart, and I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast and the host of the Future Forward Summit. Our opening session is Elevate Your Firm, How to Gain Trusted Advisor Status. Our speaker is Heather Sperduto with ADP, and I'll have her introduce herself in just a minute after I cover the housekeeping items, which are this session does qualify for CPE. Like all CPE sessions, if you want credit, you need to be here for 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and you must answer at least 3 of the polling questions. We have 5, so there's a little bit of room for error here, but you have to answer 3. If you meet those 2 requirements, we'll send you an email with a link to a short survey, just a survey about, hey, what'd you think about the session? Complete that survey, and we will email you your certificate. If you don't get that, if you think you've met these and you don't receive that, you can just email me directly. I'll put my email in the chat, and then after we get started. So the recording will be posted to our YouTube page. The link will be sent to you along with the link to the slide deck within 24 hours. I'll also put the link to the YouTube page into the chat once we get started as well. So if you have any questions, we do ask that you place them in the Q&A panel. Make sure you ask or make a specific reference to the topic, since Heather may be 5 or 10 minutes down the road before she gets to your question. So don't ask us some generic question that we won't know, or that she won't know what you're asking, or the context in which you're asking the question. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Heather. Heather, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for telling us how to take control of our practices.
All right, here we go. So for those of you who potentially I have not interacted with before, I am the Vice President of Sales Operations over at ADP. And that means I have the fun job of helping to support the design and execution of how we work with all of you. And I have an exceptional team of colleagues on the marketing, on the product development, on the service team. And in tandem, we try our hardest to make sure that we help you better serve the mutual clients that we share. And at some point in time, when you have the opportunity to recommend ADP, we want to put our best foot forward and make sure that those clients are in a really good place to thrive when they come our way. So just a little bit of disclaimer before we get started here, that today's presentation is not legal advice or the final word on today's topic, nor a political opinion. So before you take any action on the information contained in what we're going to share, You are welcome to always seek out internal or external counsel if there's anything that you want to button up on your side. So let's get started and have a little bit of conversation of modern day. And each and every one of you really endured unprecedented challenges, and you were the vanguard and helped your clients navigate a really complex world and ultimately made them resilient. And having access to up-to-date actionable insights surrounding maybe some of the data and the analytics of your clients, it's critical because it puts you in a position where you could really increase the way that you consult and advise your clients. And that's a little bit of the theme of today. And, when I look at all of the different verticals and industries that we work with at ADP, we have a humongous amount of respect and admiration for the accountant community. You will have full transparency of every single aspect of a client's GL, right? Their balance sheet. You look at their assets, their liabilities, the equity, and that puts you in this unique opportunity to offer your clients that help and that support, the advice and the guidance. And you have earned that role of trusted advisor tenfold, especially over the course of the last several years. So now that tax season has subsided, this is the time of year where many accounting professionals have the opportunity to self-reflect and focus and concentrate on your practice and look at some of the processes and the procedures that you may have to say, hey, is there an opportunity for me to evaluate and maybe think differently? Could it be the technology or the methodologies that you have in your practice to serve your clients? So the flow of our conversation today, it's actually based on a white paper that's going to be hitting the market soon from ADP, where we've gone in and we've looked and assessed and said, hey, what are some of the common challenges that are out there for accountants? And then coupling that with, are there recommendations that can help you improve your overall efficiency at the firm? And then if that happens, it puts you in a position where you could implement some of these more high value advisory services. So I have a goal. The goal when you all step away from today is I want to give you the opportunity to explore some of the resources and imagine maybe a more unified solution across your whole portfolio so that the advising can be simple. Listen, your clients are evolving, right? I mean, that's just the way of the world. Gary and I were just talking before we kicked off today's session, and we were like, we live in a world where you have to expect the unexpected. But when that happens, you can give your clients the same assurance and potentially even a better experience. So how is it that you have the sufficient operations and maybe expand the services that you offer? And when that happens, the talent within your organization, you're going to be able to hold on to them. And the reality is, if you look at any research that's done, ADP is big with our ADP Research Institution. When we look at the top challenges of business owners today, and accounting firms are no different, which is a change from years ago, but getting and keeping talent is one of the top challenges that are out there. And if you have best-in-class technology and your associates, your managers, your leaders, if we are all in a place where we enjoy what we're doing and we feel that we're equipped to be able to go out there and do our work in the best fashion, that gives people a reason to stay. And when people stay and you have good people and you keep them, that helps you to increase your profitability across the board. So again, the goal is, how do we look at some of the efficiencies? It makes everybody within the firm in a better place, and hopefully that helps to impact the bottom line. So here's how we're going to kick things off. And Gary, right out of the gates, one of the first polling questions, and to me, yes, polling questions hit the mark for our CPE credits, but this is a great way for us to be able to gauge the attendees that are with us today and kind of get a pulse as to everyone and what their thoughts are initially out of the gates. So Gary, what are we looking at here with the first poll question?
All right, you can choose your top challenge. Is it regulatory compliance, strained bandwidth, artificial intelligence, and upskilling, keeping up with new tech and tools, or just some other? If it's some other, you can drop it in the Q&A if you'd like.
Let's see what we got going on.
Just as a reminder, if you want the CPE, you do have to participate in at least 3 of the polls. So why not go ahead and participate in this one?
And Gary, you and I cannot
Yep.
vote. I saw the note on the bottom, big red thing on the bottom says hosts and panelists.
Correct. We don't want to skew the results. Don't want to skew them. So, all right, we're going to close this out in about 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1, and then I will share the results.
Interesting. So bandwidth seems to be second. Keeping up with tools and technology is first. And then third, we have regulatory compliance, which is interesting, followed by AI and upskilling. The tech and the tools, I mean, I don't know if any of you have kids or grandkids that are joining us today, or just people in your world at a younger age. My kids are 10 and 12, and Gary, their pace of technology, every time I think I get in a groove, I'm cool, I'm on Instagram. My 18-year-old niece is like, Aunt Hev, such old news. Like, you got to get with the better technology. And I'm like, I just got used to and accustomed to the one that's out there. So hopefully right now we're going to introduce you to some of those challenges and potentially how we can marry up some of this best-in-class tech to make sure that we put you in a position so that you're in a really amazing spot. So interesting on the capacity side as one of the challenges. And I want you to think for a second about some of the aspects of your work, especially coming out of tax season, that tend to be the most time consuming. And how is it from an automation perspective, you know, when you leverage some of these techs, it just makes you smile, right? Like, it puts you in a position where you're like, listen, it's making my day more productive. I'm accomplishing the work at hand in a much better fashion. So I want to ask you guys a question, and I'm going to ask you to use the chat, if that's okay. So we're going to get you guys interactive here a little bit. And in the chat, I would love for you to let us know, if you had more time in your day, what would you do with that time?
I think the chat is disabled, so you'll probably have to put it in the Q&A.
All right, so I'll open up the Q&A. I was like, no one's responding. Look at that. Chat is to say, so Steve, I love that you would take a nap and sleep. That would be a high priority on my list. I would like to go out there and exercise more, take a little walk in the day, spend time with family. Absolutely. Like, how could you not think about that one? Sometimes I feel as if we're racing from one soccer practice to another. Taking the time, Paul, absolutely. Streamlining the operating and the workflows. So interesting to hear perspective about that balance of, or the blend, some on the work side, some on the personal side, but what could we do if we had more time to be able to spend in other areas that potentially were a little bit more enjoyable? So we're going to go right out of the gates to the second one, because people always get nervous and say, hey, did I miss that poll question? So I wanted to get two up front in this session. But let's talk about how it is that we're addressing some of those challenges. So the technology that you're currently using, what does that look like? Is it on the automation side, AI, data and analytics, collaborative tools, or something else that you might put out there in the Q&A? Gary, what's your guess?
Well, I see the results as they're being being posted, so that would be cheating if I shared my guess. So I already know the answer. Plus, I don't want to skew and influence the results.
There you go.
Now, for me personally, I would probably go with the first one, automation.
All right.
That would be just for our business. All right, we'll leave it open for about 3 more seconds, then we will need to close it out. So 3, 2, and 1, and I'll share the results.
If it's you, I'm part, yeah. Automation technology as being number one, collaborative tools as the second one, okay? And then followed by a little bit on the AI side, the data and the analytics, and there's a couple others that were there in the chat. Okay, so good perspective thus far. Let's continue on and look at and start to consider, well, how do we address some things when it comes to technology or operating systems, right? What we all need to consider is that whether you are a company like a big organization, a small organization, a sole practitioner, if you're going to introduce something into your practice, like you have three options. And your first one is, do I go out there and build it myself, right? Am I going to put the infrastructure in place and I'm going to create what I need to do to make my business operate my practice more efficiently? The second one is you could buy it, right? So you have the ability, you could purchase something, you could make it part of your own. Or the third option is you could partner. And, last night I had an event in Princeton, New Jersey with our office and some of the local CPAs and bookkeepers and accountants from the area. And we were looking at the topic of retirement services and the Secured 2.0 Act, 120 pages plus, trying to boil that down into a relevant conversation to say, hey, here's the positive aspects that we need to share with our clients and make sure that they're in the know. And the question from the audience kept coming up, which is very intriguing when you think about the complexity of compliance. Hey, we're just digesting the information, right? Like, how do I in turn share that with my clients? So how do I take this 45 minutes worth of learning and give my clients that tidbit of what it's going to look like? Do I build something myself? Is there something I can purchase out there in terms of thought leadership? Or could I partner with someone that can help get the message to my clients and put them in a place where they can enroll and make sure that their clients are serving or saving for retirement? But even a company like ADP, we have this leading scale and strength. And here's who we are. We crossed the million mark. So we now have over 1 million clients in our portfolio worldwide. We pay 1 in 6 people out there. We move over $2.7 trillion annually. We have 40 million workers that we pay in over 140 countries, AA rated, and 48 years of consecutive growth. So Gary was asking me how long I've been at ADP. I didn't want to tell him. I was like, how long do you think I've been here? But the number is actually 25 years. So I've been on the benefit side of some of those consecutive years of dividend increases. But even ADP, we have to consider, do we build it? Do we buy it? Or do we partner? So with the accountant community, we had gone out there several years ago and we built, with input of the accountant community, what now has comprised of our award-winning Accountant Connect experience. So imagine, if you could, 81,000 accountants have registered for the experience, and they've generated and accessed over 12 million reports for their clients. So they get the authorization, they ask their client, can I invite you into my dashboard at ADP? They can look at the data, they can look at the trends, and they can look at the insights. And then from there, there's the ability to streamline into the general ledger and utilize some of the tools. So modern day, we take some of those 30 or so million records that we have, spanning hundreds of thousands of organizations, and say, hey, let's serve up some of the data to help you analyze things like compensation, or look at business valuations, or pull best-in-class industry intelligence from a vertical perspective. With compliance top of mind, legislative tax briefing, news, analysis, so almost like your news outlet from a compliance perspective, that every time there's a change out there, we want to make sure that we have that eye on Washington and that we serve that up in user-friendly information so that you could get up to speed and then in turn inform your clients with that advisory arm. And then the last one is, partnering with companies like a CCH that helps us fuel, whether it's CPE credits, the Master Tax Guide online, the state law library, all of that is built into the experience. However, here's where the partner concept comes into play. we have it going on in our sweet spot of what we do on the payroll, on the HR, tax credits, for example, retirement, insurance. But if I were in front of you all and I could draw a picture and I would make a pie chart, I would say if I could look back over 20 years ago when I started at ADP, 80% of what we did was payroll. But now modern day, it's almost reversed. And 20% of our portfolio is payroll, where 80% are the ancillary services that help a business operate, from the retirement to the insurance, to the HR, to the payroll and the taxes. But there are partners or companies out there that we truly feel are best in class. And when we were designing today's presentation, I wasn't sure if it should be a little bit of a surprise element and we would go one by one, but I said, you know what, let me just put all my cards on the table and let me give you a glimpse of who we have in this, kind of like circle of an experience of other players that are now part of that Accountant Connect experience. So I promise you, it's not like I'm a spokesperson for these players in the market, but I think that they are so incredible. What I would love to do is kind of frame up where we started with what are some of the challenges out there in the market, how some of these organizations can actually jump in and help in their respective area of expertise. But to me, the way that we learn is in the storytelling and that art of understanding what are your peers saying, or what are some of the individuals that work in these organizations saying, such as a Rootworks, a Giraffe, Bookkeeper, Biz Equity, or Avalara. So we're going to dive into sales tax. We're going to look at business valuation. We're going to look at machine learning combined with highly skilled accountants on the bookkeeping side for automation. We're going to bring in advisory services offering financial reporting, forecasting, and business planning. And we're going to introduce you, if you have not had any experience of working or learning from who I consider some of the masters out there in Rootworks. So ideally, in your profession and your clients, everybody benefits when we have the right partners. And that dedication and the supporting of needs creates synergy. So to me, this image is like, how do we have synergy that works almost naturally with a really good energy as firms put some of these partners in place in their practice? So let's kick off with Rootworks. And if you have never had the fortunate experience of gaining exposure to Darren Root, he's the chief strategist at Right Networks, which is now Rootworks is part of Right Networks. And he shares that power of community, of coaching and connection. And, the event I mentioned last night as we were going through the topic of retirement services and the Secure 2.0 Act, my observation was the magic of the event happened afterwards. When we went into a reception, and I could see so many of the accountants and the CPAs and the bookkeepers that were meeting each other for the first time. And they were talking about what they learned this tax season, what they're looking to do different, and just sharing in this community type setting so that everyone could learn from each other. And, with Rootworks, like Darren, every accolade in the profession, top 100 most influential accountants, like if you were ever to look at him on LinkedIn or some of the thought leadership that he authors, he boils it down with the Rootworks philosophy about get over to the cloud-based ecosystem. And he was saying this before it was like a thing, like your practice should be a cloud-based ecosystem. And when you serve your clients, you always need to be thinking, how do you do that with such precision and speed so that you can focus more on those high valued advisory services? Because ultimately that's probably what you want and definitely what your clients are craving. We did research a couple of years ago from the ADP Research Institute. And we went out there and we asked accounting professionals, hey, what do you want to do more of? And not just ADP. If you look at any of the surveys out there and many of the publications like Insightful Accountant, you'll notice that advisory services seems to be where the growth is. But we coupled that research and we went out to business owners and we asked business owners, what do you want more of from your client? And they said, hey, my accountant is so well positioned to do more. So I know we have the whole back a little bit, and we can only do so much in a given day, but they are craving for you to give them more advisory services. And since the pandemic, the thing that has kind of jumped up in our research is that they're looking for you to give them more intel that's actionable. Even in areas like HR, go back to the challenges that we mentioned earlier, getting good people, keeping good people, where there's a lot of questions and complexities, because in the modern world, people are hiring talent all over the country. And as they go into additional jurisdictions, it opens up different avenues for, yes, greater talent, but more exposure and more of an assessment that needs to be taken care of to ensure that compliance is top of mind. So at RootWorks, the other thing to consider that they put into their community and into their training and their philosophy is only accept ideal clients. We might have some clients that we spend a little bit too much time on, or regardless of what we do, doesn't necessarily seem to be hitting the mark, or we're not in a groove. Hand select the clients that you want to work with. And when you do some of those things, that could enable you to leave the chaos of some of what feels like a traditional tax season. And their data, the analytics, and the ability to analyze only helps to fuel success. And when you do so, you need to make sure that you get the pricing model right. And what does that model look like with value-based pricing for your end clients? So that's a little bit about the philosophy over at RootWorks. But whenever they have engagements out there in the market, there is this passion for standardizing systems and processes. With technology, it's at the setting, it's at the center, but you have to make sure that even if you have the right tech in place, you're on the right path to make it happen. So first step is identifying what those inefficiencies are, establishing the protocols and the procedures, and then the training curriculum. So making sure that all of the individuals in your practice have the same mindset and the right skill set, that if you're going to go all in on your tech stack, that it operates flawlessly across the board. And then last but not least, and this is one that all too often we hear from accountants doesn't necessarily happen, is how do you continue to check back in and monitor, but measure results? And measuring the results is where you can see if the systems that you put in place, the technology that you have lined up is working, making you more efficient, and then freeing up that time to look at some of those ancillary services that are on the advisory side. All right, so that's a little bit about that community over there in RootWorks. The second player that I would bring into the conversation is this whole automation of bookkeeping with human assist. And this is where BotKeeper comes up to play. Deneen at BotKeeper, she's the VP of their growth and strategic relationships. And, data is all around us. But instead of gathering the data, how can you advise without drowning in the work that needs to get done? And that is one of Deneen's biggest passions as she pushes the BotKeeper organization forward, working with every single one of you. So think about like technology that's built directly into the operating system platform, and it offers firms this comprehensive solution. And there's some fancy words out there like machine learning, AI, robotic process automation, but that's in conjunction with the people. So it's kind of like you get both. You get the tech, but then you get the expertise of senior accountants should you need it. And ultimately augmenting that manual, that time-consuming task, that creates where you become lightning fast and hyper efficient at the bookkeeping side. So BotKeeper, to me, was kind of cool before they were cool. And we were getting a pulse of BotKeeper as we were attending some of the top accounting trade shows out there and conferences across the country. And, I walked into San Diego a year ago and I'm like, is that BotKeeper with a pickleball court, like by their booth? And I was like, how ingenious. Cool before it's cool, just as pickleball is taking over the world. And I was getting ready to go on a panel with Doug Sleater, who was over to the right, who's a big thought leader in the profession, and Clayton Oates, who's from out in Australia. And, they were opening their eyes and saying like, hey, this is something that we should be looking at. It's completely intriguing and it's catching the attention of a lot of firms and firms of all sizes. So we're seeing BotKeeper come up in the top 100 firms, but then we're seeing it scalable and we're seeing where they play down market in your small to mid-sized firms as well. So BotKeeper continues to be a really good partner, and that automation with that machine learning and the AI, they definitely have something going on the bookkeeping front. So if you have exposure and you learn about them, or if you're attending any of the conferences, it is a conversation that is worthwhile to be able to engage in. So we had a little bit of flair of the community. We looked at the automation on the bookkeeping side. So we're going to continue down this path of implementing some of these higher valued service and introducing some additional partners. But before we do that, we want to come back in and get a little bit of pulse from all of you, describing like, where does advisory services fit in your practice today? Gary, what are you seeing out there? What's the buzz that you're hearing in your research, on your podcasts?
It seems that, to me, it seems that people know they need to push to advisory, but are either challenged with the how to do it, steps 1, 2, and 3, or challenged with, well, if I push to advisory, then I'm using my time more client facing, which is where a lot of people want to be anyway. But if I'm doing that, who's doing the work? Really kind of the challenges from conversations I've had.
We just had our accountant advisory board, which is 16 awesome. Darren Root, actually, one of them who was with us. And we had a whole session on this topic of advisory services. And some of our board members were indicating so much of it it's already being done. Like, accountants don't even realize they're doing it today, but maybe they're not categorizing it in their mind as advisory work, or potentially not billing for it, right? It's wrapped into the existing fees or service and part of the portfolio that way. But how do you be intentional and meaningful to genuinely look at, how do I package this up, and how do I train my staff, and how do I go out there to my client base and sell additional services that could be in their best interest, to look at the broader scope of their business, which, by the way, that the research is telling us this is what clients are truly looking for.
Yeah, and as a small business owner, I would certainly agree with that. That is what we need. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I think everybody who has voted, or everybody who wants to vote, has voted. So here we go. Close it out and share the results.
I like it. So we have a level of excitement. We have some people already offering multiple levels of advisory, which is awesome. And a portion that are still not necessarily currently offering it, but maybe today's session will sway everybody to look at some of the things that are out there that are pretty user-friendly to be able to put into the system. Okay, so let's look at business forecasting, and full transparency of all the players that I'm introducing to you today. 25 years at ADP working with the accountants in that lane. Gerard was originally the one that I personally had the hardest time trying to get my arms around. And once it clicked, though, I was like, I had that like aha moment. So we started to see them. They were like running alongside us. We would see each other around the country. There's some great players that are out there on the giraffe team. And I kept seeing them with literally giraffes. So they had stuffed animals, people are walking around with giraffe socks, and I'm like, man, they're getting the attention of everyone out there in the market. Like, what is it that is so intriguing? And the way I would boil it down is that there are tools that give you that hindsight, which traditionally is where the accounting profession lies, right? Looking at past performance. But then it brings you into modern day with the insight into the present. So what does my business look like today? But the magic is that foresight and the projecting as to what comes next. So looking through the forecasting, the budgeting, the reporting, and the planning. And at our advisory board, we were intrigued at how many of our board members actually started to implement or had implemented Giraffe into their practice. One in particular is Dawn Brolin. She's the CEO of Powerful Accounting, also known as the designated motivator, one of the most influential females in accounting, accountants in general. But she went over to Giraffe because she was trying to shift to higher value services. And she indicates that it truly transformed her firm to increase revenue and margins. And she is so passionate about Giraffe, she's actually going to do an entire webcast in conjunction with them to show others her thought process in terms of how she evaluated, where she saw the gap in her practice, what that implementation looked like, and how modern day she uses it on a regular basis. So she's helping the clients understand like the big picture and then guiding them to make really sound business decisions for their financial goals. And the way she's able to do that on the forecasting side is she has that accurate real-time insight. It improves the decision-making because now they can allocate resources within the organization that need to be, but then bolstering the performance by looking at the trends and looking at the opportunities. So that's a little bit of understanding about what the Giraffe team brings to the table. So we're going to shift gears and we're going sales tax. And working in a company like ADP, where complexity, compliance is our world on the payroll and HR side, if there's any other area that I think has like the same complication factor, like sales tax, makes people's heads spin. The navigating, it's almost like this labyrinth of all the rates and the rules and the requirements. There's like 12,000 different state, local jurisdictions across the country. And people are entering into new markets. They're adding people, could be on the sales side, employees, products, services. This is prompting new obligations for business owners to how it is that they register and how it is that they file in the proper locations. So what happens? Business owner, they're going to seek guidance and they're going to come running to the accounting professional and say, hey, where do I go from here? I have a brother and a sister-in-law. They are professional triathletes. And my sister-in-law, she wins the Ironman all over the world. She's like number 7 in the world from the race in Kona in Hawaii. So they're like not messing around. They have a coaching business, but now they're at the point where, they're in their early 40s and they're like, maybe the professional athlete is going to have to take a little bit of a backseat. We need to figure out where we go next. So they've opened up this beautiful business where they sell apparel to triathletes and athletes overall across the country. And they're living their best life, traveling from event to event to event. And they're selling a lot of stuff. Shirts and helmets and bathing suits. And, I'm the one raising my hand and I'm like, hey, Scotty and Carrie, like, what's going on with your sales tax? And they're like, we got the system, we're tracking everything, we have our accountant involved. And then, my sister-in-law is like, this is like no joke. She goes, I thought I was just coming to sell really cool stuff to a community that I adore. I didn't realize the intricacies of what it would be like to own a business. And you guys see that day in and day out with your clientele. And the sales tax is just one that is incredibly complicated. So we look to Avalara. And Sona over there is the head of global accountant partnerships. And she has been extremely passionate. I don't know if you've ever met her, interacted with her, read any of the writing that she puts out there in the market, but she is buttoned up. And Avalara looks at, with the strength of automation, helping to reduce the risk, assess the use tax, ensure the returns get filed on time, and make sure that the exemption certificates are up to date and accessible while registering in the proper locations. So the Avalara team, I was mesmerized when they were part of the Appy Hour with Heather Satterley and Liz Scott. And I saw them in action giving the history of the development of the software over at Avalara. And they told a story that it stems from their own personal background with restaurants. And restaurant has really complex rules around sales tax. And one of the, I don't know if it was a founder or someone there in the Avalara arena said, we needed to get a handle on it in our business. And who would have known that we were actually building? So the building, the buying, the partner, they were building a technology that ultimately fueled where Avalara is now in the market. So on the sales and use front, definitely one that's like worthwhile to check out because they have it buttoned up and they're able to wrangle the tax complexity, as Sona says, to make sure that you as the accounting firm, if you're involved with a client directly, it's helping to solve one of the biggest headaches for business owners. So here is our last partner. And our last partner is, we're going to address business valuation. It is very intriguing that 3/4 of the 200 small businesses out there don't know what their business is worth. You would think that they do, but they don't. And almost 80% of the time, if you ask a business owner how they're going to fund their retirement, the answer usually quickly is that they're going to retire by selling their business, yet they don't necessarily know what their business is worth. In business valuation, you typically see business valuation, unfortunately, in a life event, like a divorce or a death in a partnership or something of that nature. But I think what we've learned, not what I think, an observation of what we've learned, especially through the pandemic, and how businesses instantly had to gravitate to the PPP loan and the forgiveness, and businesses operated differently. Some of them thrived. They had something that the market wanted, and they went out there and their business grew exponentially because they pivoted and they were in the market with something that was needed. Or it was let me try to figure out how I'm going to say this. It was a business that was a necessity, right? It wasn't going to stop. It absolutely positively had to keep going. You then had some businesses that were like partially shut down, or unfortunately the fallout where people closed their doors and some didn't come back. So knowing that pulse and having that insight into the value of businesses has definitely risen to the occasion where business owners are looking for this type of guidance. BizEquity, they are a company and they came into the ADP world, not on the accounting side. We were in a meeting and we were talking to BizEquity about working with our insurance team, which made sense as you looking at policies and some of the things that the data that's associated with businesses. But in the meeting, as we started to look at their set of data, some of us were in the room and we were like, have you ever thought about taking this to accountants? Which they had, but we were so passionate that we were like, we would love to have you as a partner in Accountant Connect. And when you have someone like Patrick Strausberg, who indicates that just by asking a few simple questions, he can look at the current state and help clients plan for the future. So looping in multiple clients, determining their business value, it's positioning him as a strategic advisor. So the way BizEquity works is they calculate business valuation. They have this patented tool, but it provides an ongoing instrumental value because it's not like a one-hit wonder. Businesses should be evaluating on an ongoing continual basis to look at their overall health and then where the trajectory of their further business could go. So this, in essence, is creating an opportunity for other advisory services beyond just advisory and business valuation. So things like retirement, succession planning, they then come into the fold with biz equity as well. And I wanted to share another example with Marie. She and I were together in Miami just about a week or so ago. And the conversation of biz equity came up. She is a CPA advisor. If you look at her title, she has it right out there in her title from the Profit Lab. Her firm, her new firm, launched in 2020. And she wanted to be part of the future of the profession. So she started converting her experience as an auditor, a controller, a CFO, and she found that there was this vital piece that was missing on the valuation side. So in partnering with Biz Equity, she was, and I'll use the word empowering, as she said, because it was a pivotal software and it helped her register her methodology for advisory services. So she's using the dynamic tool and she's seeking out clients that are acquiring businesses. So she's creating a new lane where she's going after the M&A market. And she's actually using this to augment some of her existing services and leading with the conversation of business valuation. So what I want you all to think about is like, what is your story? And you may have a technology that we didn't necessarily talk about today, but there's passions around partnering where it gives you that level of excitement because you realize that you're putting something into your practice that's making you better and it's making you run more effectively. And in turn, that increases your level of engagement with your clients. So if I'm not mistaken, I think we have another poll question to wrap us up. Right, Gare? Gare, I'm calling you Gare like we've been best friends for years.
Yeah, we go way back, way back. It's the Jersey girl.
There you go.
We actually have two others. We have one that is, are you interested in learning more about tech and methodologies we discussed today? I'll go ahead and pop that one in there.
Gary, I did want to let everyone know as we wrap this up. I mentioned Accountant Connect early on. That's like the system that houses all of our partners, like to be able to go access them and receive pretty significant discounts. But last week, we made an enhancement that I would love if people are actively using Accountant Connect today, or if they want to scope out the complimentary experience, adp.com/Accountant Connect. So it's not that hard to find. Along the lines of data and analytics, we've gotten really good guidance that firms were asking us if we could create insights that were more actionable. So we went down the path about a year ago of what we called client insights, where we started to say, okay, if there are things that are changing in the world of your clients, we should let you know. So when firms have their ADP mutual clients in the dashboard, they can see if they're adding people, if they're terminating people, and if they're adding jurisdictions. But then we took it a step further because the accountants were saying, hey, this is really good, but can you tell me what I need to do with that information? So I'll just give you a couple examples. One we shared last night at the event in Princeton. In the world of retirement, there's a lot of triggers going into whether the Secure 2.0 Act or state mandates. So we can share with you some of the intel that says, hey, you have a client and they're based in New Jersey, but they hired a new IT person in California. The company has over 5 employees. There's a state mandate in California. They need to start putting a retirement plan in place. And then what do you want to do? Do you want us to talk to them? Do you want to share with them some thought leadership, or you're going to take care of it on your own? And we do that in like a few different respective areas. So in the arena of workers' comp, maybe it's about hiring in the way that they're keeping time. They don't necessarily have a handbook in place, but there's a new minimum wage in the state that they're operating in. So I would just love everyone that if you are using Accountant Connect and you haven't seen it go, it came live last week. I think it was May 17th, we hit the on switch, and it's called Proactive Client Insights. And periodically throughout the entire Accountant Connect experience, we try to share that information with you again, so you are the hero and you can then advise your clients and help them make sure that they're buttoned up, that they have the right processes in place, and you can coach them along the way to make really good decisions. So hopefully, right, in our session today, we're getting you to think about the future, because the future is here now, and you taking control of your practice. Sometimes it's just about making simple incremental changes so that you can plan for a better tomorrow. So that's what I have for everyone. We will make sure that we make the white paper available if you want to read through that at some point in time. And as I'm closing out the Q&A, I just want to share with everyone that we are hoping that Kathy is ready for some fun. Peggy is hanging with her friends. Melissa's going on a cruise. Beth has some better self-care, and that everyone is going to free up that personal time. We are kicking off the summer. It's almost Memorial Day. On behalf of the ADP team, we wish you such an unbelievable, enjoyable upcoming months with your clients, with your staff, with your friends, and with your family. So Gary, I'll turn it over to you to close us out.
That sounds great. Certainly appreciate that. There was one question in here. I'm not sure if you will be able to answer it, but it's specific to Biz Equity.
Yeah.
And it's asking, is Biz Equity providing an actual 409A valuation?
So what I'll do is their CEO, Michael Carter, I'm going to text him. I'm going to grab whoever information that was. I think it's Kelly. I will get back to you, Kelly. Just give me a little bit to just confirm with Michael, and I'll shoot you that answer.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I really like what you laid out, because it really gave some insight into kind of the, tech stack is the ongoing term, right? But these are the tools that a firm needs to leverage, right? You can have the tool in the toolbox, but if you don't ever open the toolbox, or, it's not going to do you any good. So it's a great set of tools that firms can leverage to move into advisory or to enhance their advisory. One thing you didn't mention, and I don't know if you have any tie-in with like a reasonable compensation, is that something that is available kind of within the ADP?
Yeah, so our ADP's data cloud, and we get the question often, built into Accountant Connect. I think I mentioned we have the compensation benchmarking where we pull in 30 million records. You can go in, say I have a restaurant and I keep losing the cook. I could go in by geographic area and I can pull that intel, and then I can slide it over to the benefit side. That was a big ask of the Accountant Advisory Board, like reasonable comp is where it's at, right? So we have that as a takeaway to go back in and look at how we finesse some of those tools and bring the reasonable comp in a bigger and better fashion on the advisory side to the accountant community.
Okay. Yeah, we actually just, with our business, we just went through one, and it will save us some money having gone through the process.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So great. And again, as a small business owner, we certainly appreciate that, right? I mean, every nickel counts, and it's a good service. So, and I think it's fairly easy to build it into a practice, or certainly into an advisory practice, kind of that flat fee that you might be charging. So, all right. Well, Heather, thank you so much. Certainly appreciate it. We may or may not see you in Scaling New Heights in St. Louis in just a little over a month. If we do, we'll see you there. If not, safe travels.
All right. Take care. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.